friends, welcome to AromaticChat, the podcast that introduces you to registered, clinical, and certified aromatherapists around the world. Tune in every other week to hear from aromatherapists and to learn about their aromatic journeys and how they use essential oils in their lives and their businesses. I created this podcast so that you, my listener, can hear from, find, and connect with the aromatherapist that meets your holistic wellness needs. Aromatic Chat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching. I'm your host, Melissa. I'm a holistic life coach and a registered aromatherapist. Hey friend, I am so glad that you're joining me today. Pull out your storytime mat and settle in with your cup of tea for Aromatic Chat episode number 40 with Colleen Quinn of Labaroma and labcannamist. I caught up with Colleen just before her morning run and had a lovely conversation, and I'm so glad that I can share it with you. You'll want to listen all the way to the end for an amazing enrollment opportunity that opens up tomorrow, January 20th. So let's get started.
Yeah. And then my dog's a basset hound. So
oh my gosh.
I know. The funniest dog in the world.
Oh, so that's awesome.
Personality to die for.
Here on Guam, we have what we call it's a boonie dog problem. There's like one stray dog for every 3 people. It's bad. And I went for a walk and there were 2 puppies just there on the side of the road. I couldn't leave them.
No.
Scooped them up, brought them home.
You're like
found a home for one of them, kept the other one. So
what do you call the other one?
We're very original. Her name is Spot. Okay, cool. Because she has a white spot on her. We're not real,
Well, hold on. My name
go with Seamus or Fergus or anything like that.
No,
which would have been normal for
my
us,
name sounds very smart for Luna. Her name is Luna, but it wasn't. She has like a moon shape on her back. Exactly. She has this white moon shaped fur thing on her back. Luna.
Yeah, so we're very original. But I had a service dog. I had a Scottish Terrier. Her portrait's back there, and she passed away earlier this year.
Oh, yes.
And
so
the
sad
grief and all of that, and how hard it was, and then these 2 dogs, and I was like, I didn't intend to keep one, but my husband said, you need to keep that one because she's going to be just like her. Yeah. Once we're done with the puppy stage.
It's hard. Oh, the puppy stage is hard.
I don't like it. I've never wanted a puppy, and now I know why.
No, I didn't mind. When I look back now, I didn't mind the puppy stage. I didn't appreciate it enough because now she's a full-grown monster. Mm-hmm. So I didn't appreciate it enough, I don't think.
Yeah, you're a busy lady.
I think I look very busy. I think maybe it's because I don't have a husband or kids and I have a lot of free time. But I also get a lot done in it efficiently.
In the time that you have, yeah. Yeah.
But I have a team as well. It's not me.
That's the other thing. You have a very vibrant team.
I have very small but incredible humans. So, and I think that's the thing. When people will say to me about employing people and how scary that is, I always think, yeah, it is. But your options are not to employ and tick along as you are, and that might be perfectly beautiful for you. Mm-hmm. But then the other option is that by employing a team, I see it in a few ways. I see it as a humongous responsibility. Like I'm very aware of the responsibility that is first and foremost. But you're giving them an insight into a career that they generally would never know anything about. None of my team knew what aromatherapy was before they started with me. I give them a lot of freedom, do whatever stimulates them, whatever they feel the audience wants. And I think that's really important. But it also builds the world of aromatherapy because the more smart brains and quick hands we have working in this world, the more aromatherapy we want to get to more people.
Well, and also I think as in any business, there's a tipping point, right? There's this point where I have nothing more to give.
Yeah.
And if I don't bring someone else on, this is as far as I'm ever going to get.
Yeah.
I cannot go further than this because that's
and for a lot of people, that's okay. For a lot of people, that tipping point is the place where they say, oh, fine, this is my max and I'm going to settle in here and this is great. And that's perfect. I was never built to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. I wish I was some days, but I just wasn't built to. The tipping point meant I always expanded and reached for another tipping point. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But I always have, I always ask myself, no matter what, if it's a wee decision or a big decision, I'll always say, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I said to the team, what's the worst thing that can happen? And if you can handle the worst thing that can happen, then you do it. And if the worst thing that could happen terrifies you and you would not want to have to be in that position, you backtrack. you claw it back? So I think that's the best question we always ask ourselves.
So I have a question for you then. Like, did you grow up with business-minded
Yeah.
parents?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
That's
um,
huge to already have
huge.
that mindset and
I
move
grew up
into
in a
this
business.
space. Yeah.
We
Wow.
lived in a business. So I don't know if anyone knows this, but I'll tell you. So mom and dad, dad was maybe 15. He was really young when he inherited a bar, which is very Irish. Everyone has a bar. And daddy's family
Yeah.
were, everyone
Yeah,
has a
over
bar.
in Scotland, I'm when
Same thing.
the first time I went to Scotland, like you couldn't drink until you were 18, but you could purchase alcohol at the age of 13.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So
you can serve alcohol
very
from once you can
British.
reach the pumps. Yeah, you're good. But mom and dad, dad, I should say, was the old school Irish, where his family were undertakers and publicans.
Hmm.
So, and I don't know if anyone knows that my family are undertakers. Um,
I'm loving this,
so
by the way.
yeah, well,
Share all the story. That's what we do here on
I
Aromatic
love
Chat
it.
is share the stories.
Share the story. So he done that when he inherited when he was 15. He left school shortly after that to run the bar. He met mum. I'm going to get this wrong now. I think they were kids. They were like 17 or 18. They got married really quick. They got married at like 20. Mummy moved into the bar, and it was only a bar. It was not, and it wasn't an attractive bar. It was like a country rural pub, and it was in the middle of the Troubles in the north at the time.
Mm.
So I think it was a very interesting place to be. We live very close to the border between the north and south, so there was a lot of trouble activity around that part of the world at the time. So I think it was very interesting being there then. So they had 5 kids within 7 years. In that time, they then extended the bar into a restaurant, and they just kept adding bits to it, which is kind of what I do in business too. They added a lobby, then they added another room, and then they kept expanding, made the kitchen bigger. But we lived on the property, so our house was attached to the property. So we knew nothing else but business. And mummy had jobs as well. Mummy worked with the education board
Mm.
and worked in the restaurant, but she went to work as well and raised 5 kids. So that work ethic piece just was, I think, part of our DNA. And all my siblings are the same. We all don't think anything different of just working really, really hard.
That's amazing. But that's a mindset that a lot of, okay, and we're talking aromatherapy here.
Uh-huh.
You know, aromatherapists get their education and then they go, money. They freak
Yeah.
out at the business portion of it, even though every course has a little bit of business in it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a mindset that they're
Yeah.
lacking. That
Yeah.
mindset of, like you said, what's the worst that could happen? Can I handle that? Let's go. Let's do it.
But I think it's a femme or like a female femme problem where, and it's definitely getting better in certain parts of the world where we think money's a dirty word, or
Yes.
there's lots of things I think we think are dirty words that are not dirty words,
Yes.
and until some of us start to talk about money, talk about my big thing about money is, and this is our overall long term goal in the business, is we want to have a foundation because I want to, and
Beautiful.
I kind of know what I want that foundation to be, but it's not set in my head yet, so we're not there yet. I would say the foundation's about 5 years away. I used to think I would do it for my 40th, which is 2 years away, so it's not going to happen then. But I look at the foundation, and it doesn't. Your work and earning money does not have to be for good. You can work and earn money because you want a nice lifestyle, or you want to buy the kids the clothes, or you want the 4 holidays a year. It is your prerogative to spend your money how you choose to spend your money. And I spend my personal money in that way. But the business, I want to get the business to a point where we're getting essential oil and botanical medicine and plant medicine to clinics that can't afford pharmaceuticals in rural parts of the world. That, like, I remember doing a chairing. I'm sure people listening to this will remember this. I remember being completely out of my depth and sharing a Sunday morning session at Botanica.
Oh.
Rhiannon was very mean to put me on the Sunday morning, but she did. And me and Fiona Hennigan shared it, and there was a beautiful woman, and I'm not going to remember her name. It'll come to me. She was a beautiful woman, and she spoke. She was very nervous, and she got up to speak about her work in Haiti. I had read her bio, so I had prepared to do the intro. Obviously, I had no idea what was coming. I don't think anyone in that auditorium knew what was coming. She seen the Haiti disaster happening. She packed every essential oil she had. She grabbed whatever she could. She packed a bag and she went to Haiti. And she went straight to the slums where they didn't even have water. And she started putting rosemary essential oil into water so that it would be drinkable, or at least there'd be less pesticides in it. So to try to add that antioxidant benefit. And then she treated, and she had a really defined plan. She was going to treat the people that were least likely going to be treated by the medical professions. And it's really going to annoy me, her name. I can see her. She's beautiful. She's tall. And her partner was there and he was a lovely man. And they didn't come home for a while. And then we started sending them supplies. So she had come home to talk about it. And then the auditorium, just like, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Her work was phenomenal. Her passion was phenomenal. And I remember listening to her. I was young. I was maybe 30. No, I wasn't. I'm probably 28 actually. No, hold on. Sorry. I was only about 26. I
It
was
was
really
just a
young.
couple of years back. It was just a couple of years ago.
It was a while ago. And I remember thinking, watching her and thinking, someday I will do something with this business that benefits the rest of the world and not just my beautiful community, which isn't a bad thing. But I want to do something that leaves a greater impact and helps more people. You don't have to be self-employed or build your own business just because you think that's how you be an entrepreneur or that's how you have the mindset. You can make a massive difference to someone else's company or someone else's business.
Yes.
Because your mindset is open. And that's a good thing too. You don't have to do it how I do it, which is with all of the weight of the responsibility. You don't have to.
Mm-hmm. You're amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love that story from Botanica. Oh my word. And the work you're going to do is going to change lives so greatly. Thank you so much for agreeing to come onto the podcast.
My pleasure.
I love your podcast. You're much. I'm a connector. Okay,
yes.
I connect people. I love to see people succeed, which is why I created the podcast. But you're like super, super way intelligent, and I listen to your
I don't know.
The people you talk to, though, like I listen to your podcast and I go, okay, that's going to help my brain grow. I love that.
And do you know what? Every day I do so I do it the last Thursday of the month, and the first Thursday of the month, and it's always my most intimidating day in work. So I shake most of the day. I have an amazing producer because it takes a team who is incredible. So she has me prepped like a queen. Beautiful. And I still sometimes, and this is really bad of me, but I still sometimes be listening to my guests and I'm not focusing on what they're answering me because I'm thinking, what's my next question? Even though my questions are lined out most of the time. I'm like, what's my next question? Because I don't know if I can reach their level of intelligence to make this a stimulating conversation for the audience. So we always have those self-doubts, even though it sounds like we don't, we do.
It does not come across that way on your podcast.
That is the reality.
I love that. And I'm the kind of person that just says, whether I know it or not, I'm going to show up. So here we go. We're just showing up and doing it.
And I do that too. And I try really hard not to be afraid to ask the question, even though I could fall on my face, because falling on your face is a great place to get up. There's only one way to go. Well, and that's up.
And it's, the thing is, in this day and age where we are, social media, COVID, the whole thing, everything, people aren't interested in hearing the pat answer. They want to know, the person behind labaroma. I mean, yes, they can go onto your website and read all about labaroma, but who the heck is Colleen Quinn? And that's what I do with my podcast.
Which is great because no one gets to see this. So I'm really happy we're doing this.
I'm so excited.
When Sarah had said to me, you're doing this podcast, I was like, is it about me? She said, it's about you. I was like, okay, that's okay.
Yeah, it's not about it's kind of about the business, but it's really about you.
I think it's important because I think people, like I know that I have in the past definitely watched educators and watched people and like brand owners and really just idolized them or wanted to know how they done it. And then I've been lucky enough to meet some of those people and some of them like Rhiannon are my friends. And when you get there with them, you're like, they're just people. They're the exact same as you.
Exactly. They're just people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. So the first question I always love to ask is just tell us about your journey. I mean, you've already shared, that you grew up in a business family, but the question I keep coming back to, or the thought that I keep coming back to is, I don't know of anyone in our current aromatherapy community that thought to themselves when they were a little girl or a little boy, I'm going to grow up and be a chemist and learn aromatherapy and share cannabis with the world. I don't know of anybody who grew up thinking those things. So how in the world did Colleen Quinn end up? Gosh.
So You should probably ask my mum this. I don't really know either, to be honest. So I was in school.
Yes, please be
And
honest. Yes, please be honest.
yes, I'll be immensely honest about this. So I was in school and I had a really easy time in school. Like, school was great. I loved it, but I never felt very smart. And it didn't bother me, but I just limited my options. So I also grew up in an Irish school system, which is not very expansive. Like a lot of school systems, there's no room for creativity. Okay. Maths, English, science. That's it. And very early on, based on test results, I couldn't do advanced science, which is crazy. So when I couldn't do advanced science, it meant I couldn't go into anything scientific. And I didn't realize that until I started doing A levels, which is when you're like 16, 17, which are your next step into university.
Okay.
And I remember just thinking, well, what do I do now? Because I wasn't necessarily very scientific back then, but I knew that there was right and wrong answers. And I like that. Like, I like right and wrong answers. I have this kind of split personality where I'm very creative and English is my happy place and writing is my happy place, but I like answers. I hate math. I like answers. I chose to do English, home economics, and sociology. So I knew I was fascinated by people, and the sociology piece flipped the switch in me, and getting into the nitty gritty of humans fascinated me. I'd always been into like yoga from a really young age, which was very strange as well. I always knew I wanted to help people. I knew I didn't want to stay in hospitality. I'd always worked in it when I was a kid. And I loved the people, but I didn't want the hours, and I didn't really feel it served anyone in for me. So I went to university to do psychology, and I done the first in Glasgow, actually. I done the first semester, met my best friend, and left after Christmas. I loved the learning. I read all the textbooks, and I was really bored. I had 3 part-time jobs, and I used to fly home every second weekend to work in the restaurant because I was bored. And I just knew I wasn't stimulated. So I had went home and said to Mum, what am I going to do? And you know, the way your mum knows you better than anyone else, even when she doesn't really understand what you do, she kind of just knows you. So I came home, she said, go and do an aromatherapy course. And I was like, there's no degree in it. Like, I was still in that mindset where there's a path, and the aromatherapy world and complementary medicine world didn't have a path. And I hadn't the intelligence at that point to ask myself, what's the worst thing could happen? I just seen a black hole, and I did not know what the next step was. So I started doing a 10-week like evening aromatherapy course and was hooked immediately, but very, very quickly realized that understanding essential oils and how they work together, because I'm told they work together, wasn't going to cut it for me. I needed more. I spent 2 years studying aromatherapy and reflexology at the one time. So I done the two side by side and was never taught the chemistry. So I done a 2-year aromatherapy, my certification course in Belfast, with an amazing woman who was actually an ex-Irish nun. So the mythical side of aromatherapy was what I learned to a great extent through her. She was amazing. She's since passed. And that was really interesting, but there was a niggle in me that there was something missing. I also needed to get a job. So I done a beauty course. So I done my beauty therapy qualification because it's so easy to get a job as a beauty therapist in Ireland, but not an aromatherapist. And if you're going to be an aromatherapist, you had to open your own practice. There was no one was recruiting aromatherapists. I opened my own practice at the house, and I was seeing clients, say, 3 nights a week, and it was ticking along and everything was fine. And I studied all week. So I was doing my beauty qualification, I done my Reiki training, but I still was missing this piece of aromatherapy where it didn't feel very credible to me. It felt very soft to me, but I knew it wasn't. But I couldn't pin what this thing was. It was irritating me. And then I went to the Royal Hospital one weekend to do a course on bases with Rhiannon. And she was not teaching essential oils. She was teaching bases and how to blend bases. So things like balms and salves for like irritation burns or chemotherapy, irritated skin, that kind of thing. It was a cancer hospital. I fell in love with her very quickly. And the little bit she talked about essential oils that weekend, she talked about their chemistry. And a light bulb went off. And I thought, that's the piece. So I spent the next 3 years, anywhere she was teaching, I went. And she tells a great story about it. I went to Manchester to the Christie Hospital to do her advanced clinical aromatherapy. And she said she just looked at me the whole weekend. The first weekend, I looked like this lost kid at the back of the room. I was 20. And she said, I just looked like this lost kid among all of these nurses. And she just said she'll never make it. And I don't really know what she's doing. And then she got my homework for the first weekend and she said, oh, she's going to be fine. So I think my face must have looked as terrified as my soul was. But she knew I had the ability to do it. I got it. It clicked. Chemistry just made sense to me. It made complete sense. And then I just studied for the next 10 years. I worked in my own practice. I stayed in cancer care. And that's where I definitely started to help. I became a Macmillan trained therapist, which is like Macmillan's like a huge organization in the UK that supports cancer patients and cancer patient carers. So I done a lot of work with them in Belfast. And I worked for 10 years doing that. I worked in a cancer, I volunteered. I always volunteer. So I volunteered in a cancer charity. And then they got funding for a lead therapist. So I became their lead therapist at 22, and we had 17 therapists, and I just coordinated their schedules. But none of them would take the terminally ill patients. None of them wanted to go to the people's homes when they knew they were passing, even though they might have been treating them for 6 months in the charity. But because I grew up as an undertaker's daughter, death didn't scare me. Right. So I had no problem going to their homes knowing that I would never see them again, or I might only ever see them once more. And I still, when I look back, that was probably the most privileged thing I've ever done, was to care for someone in their last days.
Wow. What a story. And I am so curious how your mother knew about aromatherapy and pointed you in that direction.
I think she just knew I needed to care for someone. I'd never been into pharmaceuticals. So I hurt my back when I was really young playing football. And I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor like giving mum like 4 drugs on a script, and we got into the car and mum scrumpled it up, and I was like, I'm not taking those. And she wasn't anti-medicine, and I wasn't anti-medicine. I was like, there's other things I can do. I don't need to do that. And I think she just always knew that I was very earthy and natural always. Like I was happy in the forest, and my family have this running joke that I'm just different. And I don't think I'm that different, but to the normal, I probably am a bit different in that where a lot of people will, get a takeaway or a big bar chocolate or a glass of wine to unwind. I need to go to the forest and I'll be fine. I just need to hug a tree and I'll be fine. So I would say to a lot of people that sounds a bit different, but I think she just got it. But she's still the one person that I'd ring that will, and she doesn't have answers. She doesn't always have answers, but she just A, listens, and B, gets it. She just understands me.
She's a good mom.
She's a great mom. She's very young as well, which I think is a big help.
Yeah.
Do you want the rest of the career story?
Yes, absolutely, because you didn't stop at aromatherapy.
No, so I ran my own practice for a very long time and I loved it, but I was doing a lot of beauty work, which made sense. And maybe this is a business mindset again. Aromatherapy wasn't that common. Aromatherapy massage was not common. Once I had an aromatherapy massage client, they were a client for life. Like they were hooked. And I also had I went to Thailand and Indonesia and studied Thai massage and Indonesian massage. So I had a really strong toolbox of different tools that meant that just no matter what presented to me on the bed, I could treat it. And even now today, massage is the greatest gift in the world. I call it dancing with muscles, because for someone to give me their body to care for it is just, and I rarely massage anyone now, like rarely. So that was lovely and it was great. And I was very happy living in Ireland. And then I decided, I was always making products for my clients. Like as aromatherapists, we make bespoke blends for every client. But I had got to the point around the age of about 27 where I was running the cancer charities therapeutic league, and that was huge. And we were having a lot of deaths, obviously. It was part of the job, but we were losing therapists. It's hard. And there were volunteers, so it was hard. So that was getting stressful. And clients would ring before their appointment and say, I know you're going to make me my blend for my massage, but can you make daddy something for his athlete's foot? Mommy has IBS and my son has a migraine. And I'd say, sure. And I'd go into my little room and I'd make all the blends. And I was getting to the point where I was making all of the blends, and I don't know how well I was making them that effectively, accurately, or with the energy I wanted to make them with, because I was under so much pressure to get it all done. So I left the charity work and I decided that if making products was something that my clients thought I'd done well, then I should build a brand. And this was probably the fundamental mistake with the brand, which was called Luciana Bella. My plan was to have a therapeutic aromatherapy line, but that was ahead of the wave back then. That was 10 years ago. So I decided to build a bath and body brand, get credibility under the name, and then release the therapeutic products like roller balls for stress. But actually, the cost and the time it takes to build any brand is colossal. So we were a year in, and the therapeutic end of the brand was going to be a completely different concept. And it was still so far ahead of the wave. So I ran Luciana Bella for 10 years. And I was back and forth to London, so it done really well. To the naked eye, it probably looked like an incredibly successful brand. It was in Space NK, it was in all the Harvey Nicks. It was beautiful, but it needed so much marketing money to make it work that it was never going to actually be a big brand, and it was exhausting. We always had labaroma, so I built the software to help me be more efficient when I was making endless blends for clients. And we'd kind of put a bit of a skin on it so it looked presentable and aromatherapists could use it. But we hadn't put a lot of effort or time into it. But it was ticking along. And she would always say to me, is ticking along, it's self-sufficient and you barely give it any attention. And you're putting your soul into Luciana Bella and it's making the same amount of money. From a business point of view, this is a bad idea. So I heard that in my ears for about 2 years. And then my life completely changed. I divorced, which was a huge unexpected change. Then I moved to London. I seen it as a chance to just, if you blow your life up, you may as well blow it all up. That was kind of my attitude.
Right.
Like if you're going to blow it up, do it all. So we closed Lucy at the same time. Closed Lucy and decided to focus on labaroma, which was the best idea I've ever had, the best decision we ever made. We said we'd give it a year. We'd put everything into labaroma. And we were a bit speculative. Labaroma is very niche. Like it's a plant chemistry software tool for aromatherapists. That is never going to go mass market. That is there to serve aromatherapists and make us more efficient and better at what we do. And the same year, I was asked to go to California to formulate for a cannabis client. I had never smoked cannabis. I had never taken cannabis. I didn't know it. I just knew it was a plant. And I went there for 8 weeks to do a consultancy job for them to help them get terpenes into their vapes. And it was the wildest 8 weeks of my life. I probably needed the sun at that time. I needed a break. And I came back and said, I'm going to go into cannabis medicine. This is what we're going to do. And that was in 2016.
Wow. So that was before it really blew up as a industry.
But I'm very grateful because people started talking about terpenes 3 years ago. But I worked with an incredible chemist on that job called Matt, who I am forever indebted to. He was the cannabis expert and he knew what terpenes were, but he didn't know them the way I knew them and the way so many aromatherapists knew them. So he taught me everything I needed to know about cannabinoids in the plant. I taught him everything he needed to know about terpenes, and we were the perfect work-wife-husband team. We were just brilliant. I am forever grateful to him. He taught me everything I needed to know. I came home and just realized that there's an opportunity to work in a plant medicine that the pharmaceutical companies probably won't get their hands on now. No one in the corporate world understands that every time you plant a seed, it will never give you the same chemistry. It's a plant. Okay, you're not in control. Mother Nature is. I knew that I could explain that narrative to corporates. Like I worked commercially long enough to know that I could speak their language, but I also speak a plant language. So the two married really well. And it was the best decision I ever made. I could have come home from California and said, that was great. And that was a great project. And I'm away back to focus on software. But we decided to run a dual focus. And we focused on labaroma and cannabis medicine.
And labcannamist was born.
LabCannamist was meant to be a book, actually. I was writing a book and then realized that there was enough books out there and this needed to be taught in a very practical way. When I was writing the book, I had an amazing assistant at the time, Tandy. She was incredible. And the start of the book is actually probably module 1 of LabCannamist. And it was all about the politics, the history. Like I had uncovered, and this is not news, cannabis was being proven. So like the politicians, will not get too political, but they were issuing surveys and research to be done to prove the plant wasn't therapeutic and it was bad, and the results were come back that the plant was nothing but therapeutic and beneficial, and they were locking those studies away and gagging the researchers and all of that. So I found all of this completely fascinating. As far back as it was used for PTSD in World War II. I know that's a public study that wasn't locked away, but all of that I just found completely fascinating. And I'm not a political person. I'm not an angry person. Like I just got I love history. So I got very obsessed with this. And I remember at one point, Tandy said, is it your place to write a book? Is it an Irish white woman's place to write a book about the politics of cannabis? And I said, no, I have no business writing this book. And she was right. She said it in a very polite way, I had no business writing this book, but I did know that you cannot follow a plant and use a plant and benefit from it without you knowing what it's come through. And that's what makes cannabis so powerful and so strong, is what it's come through.
That's amazing.
It's fascinating.
It really is. It really is. And yeah, we won't go into all that. That's another podcast completely.
It's my favorite conversation when I get into it. So we'll never be here.
love it. You have shared a lot of your story. It's very inspiring. But I'm curious to know who inspires you and why.
That's a question. This is going to sound really cheesy, but this is the truth. What inspires me is our students, our community and our students. Example, this morning, Amathea, my podcast producer, who was one of my first labcannamist students, and then was just a genius. And every question she asked me in the delivery of the course, I would have to go and like get her a really informed answer. Like it wasn't on the top of my head. And I love that. I love being challenged. So we give her a job. I was like, this woman has to be in my life. She said something in an email last night about going to meet someone, or she was talking to someone such and such, and I recognized the woman's name, and I was like, I know her. She's one of our students. She was, yeah, we met in the community group. Now we're friends, and now we're going to see each other. I was like, that's incredible. I think when I watch what students do with the knowledge that they get, especially from labcannamist, and I know we've lots of other courses, but labcannamist is kind of it's the big one. I've watched people change careers because of the course, and like, yes, we can credit the course for that, but actually I credit their bravery for that and their passion for life. Like we've one person who now works in a dispensary, couldn't get a job in a dispensary, and then went with her labcannamist credentials. Now is doing that. We have a vegan chef who now only works with cannabis food. We have a woman who was like making a skincare brand and doing well, converted it into a CBD brand and stuck off. That is what inspires me. And as long as I keep hearing those nuggets of stories, we have this thing in work called a positivity board. And the days when it's really hard, I just go open the positivity board and it's like, okay, so this person helped her daughter with this condition, or, you know, this son's recovery from his shoulder surgery was so much less painful than his previous surgery because his mom knew how to give him cannabis. Like, that's the kind of thing that inspires me. So it's not big business people. It's not brand leaders anymore. It's not really educators anymore. It's the people that are making a difference in their day-to-day lives that is so inspiring to me.
That's beautiful. And I can't wait for the people who you have inspired to hear this podcast and see the circle, the full circle. You've inspired them and they're coming right back and inspiring you. That's getting me a little verklempt.
I know, me too. And we done an exercise a few weeks ago, which I wasn't prepared for. We done an exercise where we thought we'd get like video testimonials from 5 students. And I ended up crying at all 5 of them because I could see their excitement and how it affected their lives and how it just had made such a difference. And I thought, you know, if you can only touch one person in your lifetime, then you've done your duty.
You've been doing this for quite a while. About 20 years.
20 years. Yeah.
Aromatherapy and now the cannabis.
Yep.
In your professional opinion, where do you see aromatherapy headed in the future?
A few things. If I think about how I feel about the future of it, I feel equally excited and equally a little distressed. I think COVID has really helped us in a weird way, in that as a global population, we're now more aware of our day-to-day wellness and the importance of it. When I hear about people fighting about not wanting to go back to the office, I'm kind of proud of them because they've realized that their mental health is affected by doing heavy commutes or being in that kind of artificially lit environment for so much of their day. So I kind of love that people are fighting for their own mental health and their physical health. I think that whole wellness and preventative wellness has become just stepped into its light because of COVID, which is one of the very few silver linings from COVID. And I think with that, people are going to start to turn towards plant medicine. And I can see it even to a small extent in my own life. Whereas I would have given my family aromatherapy blends all the time, they would have said, yeah, thanks. They never asked for them. Right. Whereas now, my phone at least once a week will get a message from a friend or a sister or someone saying, I need more antiviral blend. I am so happy to be back in a place where they want me to make their day-to-day supports. I think cannabis is going to drive us forward humongously. And I don't think we've seen this yet, where attention on terpenes has not flipped into people realizing that's aromatherapy. That hasn't happened yet. That switch hasn't went on in the cannabis world yet.
Right.
Now, I'm pushing for the switch, but it will come. And I really feel that will help drive the credibility and the awareness of aromatherapy from a plant-based point of view. And I think that's incredible. So I think that's very promising and very exciting. And I think education is going to be a huge part of that. And I think that's really important. Where I'm a little concerned, the big corporates, which we can see already, are going to damage our reputation and damage the credibility and damage the plants, which is probably the biggest problem. from a sustainable point of view, from an energetic and respectful point of view. My concern is that the plants are going to start to be disrespected and damaged. If we aren't careful, we could lose our plants to corporate, and we can't allow that to happen. I feel torn because on one hand, and I've said this for years, the big companies have massive marketing budgets. So us little guys should tuck in under their wings, ride that marketing budget that they have that we don't have, and talk about a more authentic message. And I'm more than happy to do that. But I feel like I spend a lot of time contradicting what they're saying, and I'm fine to do that. I did ask myself over the summer, what can we do for the plant that is different from what's been done with the big corporates? And one of the things I think we're going to try to do, take a few weeks and we'll take you back to what the plant is, which is seeds in the ground,
right,
hardworking farmers that make a living from caring for our plants, the distillation, and like walking you through that process in different parts of Europe. You need to see it. Until you see it, you can't feel it until you see it.
Right.
And no one's really showing that part of it. And I think it's really important that we reconnect to that.
Going back to what you were saying about big corporations and the plant, the word that keeps coming to mind for me is they're molesting. They're molesting our plants.
Yeah.
And it's going to harm them in a way that's not even going to be visible for 20 or 30 years. Just like a child that's molested, the harm really isn't visible for 20 or 30 years. It takes time for the harm to mature.
Yeah.
And that's the word that I keep hearing when you're talking is, the molestation of our plants.
I think that the land is just being ravaged. And I think it's important that we start to see where it's not been. Yes, we know people that are doing amazing work, like, Aromatics International, the most amazing sourcer I know. She is so respectful of how she sources. She works with farmers. She knows her people. But not everyone's like that. And I'm sure there's loads. But then we know farmers like Marco in Italy who goes to the mountains and looks after the land. And I also feel like I've had this privileged position for a very long time where I know some incredible people, like this beautiful woman, Christina, who's in Provence. And she harvests her own mint and she harvests her own lavender. And she's never going to become commercial. That's not her thing. She goes to the market. We all have them beside us, especially in parts of Northern America and California. Like Oregon is one of the most plant intelligent and rich states in the country. Maine is becoming so plant focused as well. Now, yes, seaweeds are a big thing and all of the ocean plants, but let's show the world that, and let's show the world that you can get your plants from your neighbor on a small scale. And yes, you're going to pay a bit more, but you should. They are plants. They are immensely precious. Work like Botanica is incredible work, and Rhiannon does an amazing job. They put light on distillers that are doing incredible work. I remember meeting a beautiful woman from Iceland who had like 9 different species of pine from Iceland. And I just thought she could just choose to go with a straightforward pine officinalis and work with that. She hasn't. She's shown the breadth and depth of the plants that grow in her beautiful country. That's the kind of people that we should be focusing on, that we should be caring for. I think when we do that, then we're going to win. My other slight concern about the future, although I do think this will change, the masses, the main market that aren't aromatherapists and aren't necessarily plant focused, they are buying blends and they believe blends are aromatherapy. And they don't actually know what's in the blends, never mind what's in those individual essential oils. That concerns me. I don't like people not understanding essential oils. It concerns me that they consider blends to be aromatherapy. I love blends. I blend all the time. But when I blend, you know what's in it. And you should know what's in it. And I think that's something that I'd really like to nip that little pattern in the bung.
I was at the Air Force commissary the other day and there's a little box of blends and I just,
It's concerning.
It is very concerning. And that's one of the things I tell people whenever I give talks or if they always ask me, where do you buy? Well, I can tell you where I definitely don't buy.
Yeah.
I don't buy at these places, which are very common places to buy. So what is one concept, just one, okay, because I know you're an educator. I know this is going to be hard. What is one concept that you think people just don't understand about aromatherapy?
That it works. That's it. It works. That was easy to pick one. I still find it fascinating when people say to me, "Oh, I'll just take a paracetamol instead." I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Well, that's just that, witchy stuff. And I definitely, I used to rebel being called a witch for years. Now I embrace it. Call me a witch all day long. I love it.
My husband calls me his witch doctor. For my birthday, my friend is a cake baker, and she's amazing. She made me a cauldron with the bottle pouring a green
Amazing.
brew into the cauldron, and I mean the whole thing was edible. Everything on it was edible.
Amazing.
So
I
I
love that.
definitely embrace the witch doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm happy, more than happy to be a witch doctor all day
Yeah.
long. There's loads of things, but that's the one thing that stands out is that, do you know, I no longer try to convince people. I'm just like, do you know what? There's too much work to be done for
Yeah.
me to try to convince you. If you
Exactly.
want to give it a try, great. If you don't, that's completely up to you. And I'm a complementary therapist. I'm not an alternative therapist. And me and my eldest sister used to log her head on this for years. She's a medic. And we used to clash when we were younger because she was going through her university days and medicine was everything. I was in my complementary days. We need both of us. But if
Yeah.
we can have me on a day to day, I'll have less need for you when I am ill. That was always my plan. She's been in this boat with me for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
And we're very complimentary. And especially with cannabis, she sends me a lot of people now that need CBD, which
Yeah.
I just think is brilliant. But the big thing is people challenging and asking if it works just blows my mind.
Your sister. I'd like to meet her. She sounds
She's
great.
hilarious.
She
She's
sounds great.
hilarious. She's hilarious.
Okay, just a couple of more things. How can people find the things that you offer? Of course, we're going to include the links, but I love for people to hear it in your own voice. How can they find you and what you do?
I think one of the best things we do that we started a few years ago was our community group. So it's on Facebook. I go live there most Mondays unless I'm on an airplane. I literally get a cup of tea, just like now, and I sit down and I talk through your aromatherapy questions, your life questions, your cannabis questions. We talk it out together, and then I typically blend. It's the best part of my week, and it's the most enjoyable thing I do. And it's also where you're going to find out what's coming up and what's happening. So yes, we put everything on social media and all of that. And our emailer is really useful. So our emailer, and we'll give you a link to it because it's the most efficient thing we do where you never miss anything because of the emailer. Our courses are, so the software is on labaroma.com. The software is complemented by the education. For a lot of people, they don't need the software, they need the education. And typically when they get into the education, then the software becomes an asset because they want to dive deeper into what they've learned in the courses, and the software provides that for them. So I'm not precious about which way you find us, whether it's software or education, as long as you benefit from something we do. The education is a huge piece of what we do, and we've put a lot of work and time into it. So I wrote all our courses. We've a new one launching next April, and then I have one more to write next year, and it's probably going to be another big one like labcannamist. And I haven't said a lot about it yet, and I haven't even surveyed the audience on it yet. But it's different in that it's still aromatherapy, it's still plant science, but it's more about women and supporting women as they
Beautiful.
go through life from a hormonal self-empowerment and embodiment point of view. We need that now, and I think that's really important. So the solutions are plant medicine, as well as meditation and yoga and sound baths and all of those kind of things. But that's going to be next September. So the first half of my year next year is getting into
Beautiful.
that deeply. And
Oh, I
I'm not
love
going to do it on my own. I'm bringing in a team of beautiful women that do their world really well. Lab Cannabis only opens once a year. It's my big thing, and we do it at the start of the year. And it opens tomorrow, and it's only opened for 10 days. And then I deliver it for 8 weeks. And you don't have to be available for those 8 weeks. So the 8 weeks start, I think it's the 7th of February. And you don't have to be available. Everything we teach in that 8-week delivery. So there's a weekly Q&A, there's 3 masterclasses. All of it is recorded. So you can pre-submit questions if you can't make it live, and then you get the recording afterwards. We say it's an hour Q&A, but a lot of the time it runs for an hour and a half or 2 hours because I'll stay as long as is needed to answer the questions. So I'm really excited about it, and I love teaching it. It is just my happiest place.
Would someone take the labcannamist course who's just interested in learning about
Yep.
cannabis, or is it really specifically for people who want to use it in their formulations?
No, so we've had grandmothers who've taken it because they want to understand how to sleep better, or it's legal in their state and they don't understand it. And maybe they came from a place where the war on drugs was their go-to, and that thought process is being challenged and they want to understand it from a scientific point of view. And we've had a lot of that. And I never expected that. People coming and saying, okay, this is a reality in my world now. My kids are taking it, my grandkids are taking it, and I don't like the plant because I have been trained to believe that it's bad. So I
Yes.
want to learn why and how it works. So we've had so much of that unexpectedly. So there's a lot of that. And Then there's a lot of people who come because they want to work in the industry or they want to formulate with it. But I would say a good 50% of our students are aromatherapists or herbalists or botanists or nurses. We've had a few doctors, but mostly nurses that want to make it for themselves. They want to have the control of making their own plant medicine, but they want to know what they're doing. They don't want to just go into a dispensary, buy something. They want to grow their 6 plants. They want to learn how to extract the cannabinoids and the terpenes from them and make their own medicine. So there's 20 recipes in LabCannamist, and they're all very different. They're ingestible and topical. And then if you do LabCannamist Pro, you get an additional 12. And then I give recipes out throughout the enrollment process.
That is so cool that anyone can take this course.
Anyone
who just wants to understand cannabis and not be afraid of it anymore, because, we've been afraid of it for several decades.
Especially in America. There's lots of certification with LabCannamist. So you can get your AIA, BCAOA, NAHA, and CFA. So your 2 American, your 2 Canadian associations will give you your continuous education points with it. Cool. But it's also CIBTAC certified, which is an international certification. So if you are a therapist that works in any capacity and you want to be internationally certified in a cannabis program, so it's their first ever cannabis program, then you can with CIBTAC, which is huge. But for some people, none of that's relevant or useful, and it's completely up to you. I always think when you're an aromatherapist or you're in a position where to maintain your memberships and your insurance, you need to take a course and you're looking at it. You're going to want to take a course that's not only going to give you your points, because that's something you have to do, but you want it to fill your brain with a new set of skills and knowledge that you can use in your personal life or your professional life for the betterment of the quality of your life.
Or even just be able to speak intelligently about a topic that you've never exposed yourself to before.
I know, I feel like we're building a little army of people that are out there scientifically speaking about a plant.
Yeah, that's amazing. So in our final few minutes together, I just want to let you have the floor.
And the only thing I would say, and it's probably going back to your question about the future of aromatherapy or where we are with it. The one thing I would really like people to do, and you don't have to be an aromatherapist to do this, you just have to have some knowledge of some level of oils, is to teach the kids. When I say teach the kids, I mean, and I'll tell you a story about how this sort of clicked in my brain a few years ago. If we teach our kids that plants are there to support us and that they're incredibly powerful little plant essences in these tiny bottles, our kids will lean into those for their physical and mental health, and they won't get to the point where they need drugs recreationally or pharmaceutically. And I think that is the tiny thing we can do for the future of our families, our communities, and our world globally. And how this clicked in my brain was that I don't have kids, and I'm really happy not having kids. I have a totally different mission in life, but I'm a really good auntie, and I love my 7 nieces and nephews. I have 2 nieces, and the rest are all lunatics. They're all boys. We call them the Hurricanes. But my 2 girls are beautiful, sweet little girls. And a few years ago, Katie wasn't sleeping very well. Her mum said, can you give her something? And this is the beautiful thing about my family. They will come to me and say, can you give me something? They'll not go to the pharmacist. I'm their first port of call. And I don't always have the solutions, but I'll always try. And I made them this blend. And I can't remember what was in the original blend, but there was definitely lavender and petitgrain in it. And I put blue tansy in it because I wanted the blue, because I needed the girls to marry into, and it's sorry, even though Katie wasn't sleeping, you have to give it to the both. You can't treat one and not the other. The 2 girls are joined at the hip. So I put blue tansy in it so that it would be ocean blue, and like that oceany color that blue tansy gives, because I knew they would be more married to the ritual of it. That was about 4 years ago. And every single night, the girls get their feet massaged with their sleep blend. It sits beside their pillow. Their dad does it. He curses me because he has to do it every single night. And when I visit them, or when I'm there on Friday nights, which is often, all of them, so there's 4 kids, the boys have to get it as well. That's what they associate now with sleeping better. So when they're older, or they're doing their exams, or they're trying to find a job, or they're sleepless mothers in 20 years' time, it's aromatherapy that they're going to look to support their sleep. It's not going to be sleeping pills. It's aromatherapy. And it's those tiny, tiny things that we can do as aromatherapists that will make a huge difference to the quality of someone's life. So we need to teach the kids.
Oh gosh, Colleen, thank you so much. Oh my word. Thank you so much. No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking your morning. You're missing your regular run time to talk to me.
Don't worry. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's not often I sit down and talk, so thank you so much for making it easy.
Wow. Just like Colleen said, it is not big business people. It is not brand leaders. It is not the educators. It is the people who are making a difference in their day-to-day lives that is inspiring. I want you to know that you have something amazing to bring to this world. I believe that every single person on this planet was designed with a purpose and a plan. You have gifts and talents that are uniquely yours. As we step into this beautiful new year with new possibilities, I invite you to consider the gifts that you have to bring to the world. So many of us get bogged down and overwhelmed with the day-to-day of life that we lose sight of who we really are and begin to hide those gifts and talents and even our very personality. I want you to know that I am here to help if you're struggling to return back to yourself. Thank you for joining me today on Aromatic Chat. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcast. Aromatic Chat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching, and you can find and connect with me, your holistic life coach and registered aromatherapist, on the web at lemonbalmcoaching.com. I will see you next time with our next episode. Until then, peace, love, and aromatics.